Hey, welcome to the Community Podcast. I'm your host, Chase Johnson Lynch, here on Big Condo Online. And we endeavor to bring you interviews with people from the community that I feel have something special to say and that are really special to hear from. And I have a good old friend here in the room with me today and everything. We have our own way of communicating with each other. But before I go into that, let me introduce the lovely Anna Rothery. Hello, Anna.
Hi, Chase. Lovely to see you again.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely lovely to see you again. I mean, like the thing about it is I can't even remember how long we've known each other, but, I've been here for 20 years in Liverpool and everything. And I know we're going to go through your history and all that kind of stuff. But, in one of our fun kind of night things with each other, it's like we always realize that people have a hard way of understanding one another. So then we would just like have this joke about like cluck, cluck and quack, quack.
Yeah.
And sometimes I would think that was such a private joke, but because we're on social media, I would be embarrassed sometimes. Like if I say it, will people think I'm insulting you?
No, not at all.
No. I wait for you to say it first, though.
Yeah. No, I mean it came from we all speak different languages.
Yeah.
Not just in the real sense, but in terms of depends what sector you work in.
Yeah.
And sometimes it really is like chicken trying to talk to ducks and vice versa,
Yeah,
But,
exactly.
But the thing is that, where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah.
And so even if a chicken wants to talk to a duck, you will be able to find a way in the end so you can communicate.
Exactly. And I mean, it's just one of those fun things that you can have with somebody. But I think, first of all, we can't bury the lead before we go into the history. But you were the Lord Mayor of Liverpool and everything. And you're no longer the Lord Mayor. But I mean, I thought it was just, first of all, it was fascinating for a person of your stature to go from being an MP to not being an MP, being a counselor?
Counselor, yeah.
All right, see, I'm an American, so I get things wrong. Being a counselor, I love it how she... being a counselor and then moving up into this role and everything. And I just think it's fascinating. I just want to start there because, like, how was it, like, to go there, to be the Lord Mayor? And now she didn't want me to say, like, the first... female Lord Mayor or the first black Lord Mayor, but because it really doesn't matter, does it? And
I think it does to some extent. I mean, I'm proud to be the first black Lord Mayor.
Yeah.
Because that really for me epitomizes, everything I've been striving for throughout my lifetime. In spite of it, I never aspired to be Lord Mayor. I never wanted to be Lord Mayor. I never even thought about it. But, when the opportunity arose, it was like a double-edged sword because the reality was, there would be some fantastic things that could be done. And there would also be some, kickback in terms of people saying, well, why would you want to be the Lord Mayor? But, at the end of the day, life is all about challenges. And you always have to look for the positive. I'm an eternal optimist. And for me, when I was considering, and it was a huge consideration, I focused on the good things that I could achieve as Lord Mayor, not just on a personal level, but, for the community that I represent and the wider community in Liverpool.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously one of those communities was Texas.
Of course.
And when I knew you in there, I was always often seeing that this was something very near and dear to you because you were out there in the forefront, walking the street when it was like a walk or out there, like giving out food. You were doing various different things. What are some of the favorite things or most impactful things to you that you felt you were doing?
I mean, it's, I take it really seriously, the fact that I'm an elected member and we're here to serve.
Exactly.
And I never forget that.
Right.
I think the day you forget that you're here to serve the people that you're elected to serve, then you're in big trouble. And so, and I found in terms of over the years, it's been quite challenging being in politics. But, I've always been able to go back into the fold of my community, and just, a number of things either just double check, have I still got it right? Has the message changed? Do you want me to do something else? But sometimes very, very selfishly, because I just need that big community hug, you know, to spur me on to the next level. But I think in terms of things that I've done in the community, I've been responsive to the need, whether it's on an individual level or a collective level. And, you know, and I'm able to put the emotions aside and still be able to do what is right at any given time. And so things like the food banks, you know, the hungry must be fed, there was no question about that. You know, people might have said I was stupid, it was right in the middle of COVID and people were staying at home. But, you know, the reality is that I was well aware that we've got so many elders in the community who, you know, we're going to be sitting there with no food in the cupboard, you know, maybe no heating, not being able to pick up prescriptions and stuff like that. And also we had some really vulnerable people, like one of the women who had just had brain surgery, come out of hospital and had a child to take care of, an adult young man who had special needs. And so just knowing your community, when you know your community that well, you just can't sleep at night. And so that was the motivation for me. I couldn't have slept well knowing that there were people going without. So that was the motivation behind setting up The Hungry Must Be Fed. And then, you know, with some of the contacts that I've got, I was able to work with a restaurant, Fazenda restaurant, who donated £450 a week to do the food. And then to work with another local business from Canning Street, they were a catering company, and they'd been hit by the pandemic. Yeah. And they had lots of stock that was going to be useless, you know, stuff that had bought in for events that they were going to do. So partnered up with those guys, and we decided to do restaurant standard food that we could freeze and deliver, you know, 7 lunches and 7 evening meals into the community on a Monday, you know, and it worked well. And then we called on, you know, local community members to come and volunteer, and somebody provided a van. And, you know, it's one of those things, community we find a way. Yeah. You know, and that's what happened. We found a way to do it.
But also, though, I mean, like you were there and making sure that this is happening because, as you often stressed, your community, like, comes first. And, you know, and in doing the show notes, you know, for this, you know, we started to dig a little deeper, you know, and like hearing like your mother's story was really fascinating to me because, you know, like, you know, as a widow, she had 5 kids and she had to survive. And, you know, one of the roles that she had taken on was, well, I'm going to drive a taxi. And there was not many female taxi drivers at this time. I mean, I don't know. Anna might say, I think we could say the 70s, right? But yeah, I mean, so tell me about that, you know.
Well, I mean, you know, she was a widow, and my father died in 1962 when I was just a baby, really. And she was left to look after, you know, 4 children on her own. But, you know, she didn't give in. She'd had a good education, actually, and she'd been to private school as a child. She went to Notre Dame. But, you know, she made a life choice, and her life choice was to marry my father and settle in Liverpool 8. And as I say, once he'd passed away, she was left to you know, be mother and father to the children. And so she had a car, and she had a driving licence. And, you know, there was Davy Live, who used to be on Granby Street years ago, for people who remember that far back. And so she rocked up there and said, you know, can I have a job? And they went, oh, yeah, you can have a job. So she became an operator for the taxi firm. But she quickly realised that her pay was rubbish in comparison to what the guys were getting. And so she kept asking, well, you know, can I be a driver? And they were like, no, love. You know, the women don't drive. You're an operator. And, you know, and she was persistent, and she kept asking. And in the end, I think they just said, just let her drive. And so she started driving a taxi there. And so she used to put me and my little brother on the front seat of the car. And it was one of those old Rileys that used to have the long seat right across the front. And she'd put us in the car to take us to school. but you might take a fare on at the same time.
Why not?
So we'd have, there'd be me and my younger brother Danny in the front seat, and then she'd be doing like a drop for a fare, etc. But those times were really tough.
Yeah.
It was difficult times. Anybody around my age group knows how difficult it was.
Yeah, because this was the 70s, wasn't it? And,
yeah.
So, I mean, and like you said, I mean, times are tough.
Yeah,
but like,
early 70s. I mean, I was born in 62. And
right.
so, anybody can remember back then, it was awful. There was just nothing around. We had a strong sense of community, which was fantastic. But everybody had very little. But what we had, we shared.
Yeah, no, exactly. But then again, is like, so the 70s is also in Liverpool known for its time period. And like, I did a documentary once about it, but it's known for a particular type of house party. Yeah. That had corn. Now, do you know even where this word came from? The shebeens.
Yeah.
Well, where did that come from?
I don't know.
I was hoping you would solve a mystery.
Listen, I don't know. I just know that it was part and parcel of my childhood. There was shebeens everywhere. There were house parties. There was some famous shebeens, some great families who had the most liveliest parties, etc.
Well, Princess Avenue was full of them, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, of course. But, not just there. There was other areas as well, just a little bit further out from the avenue.
Yeah.
When we lived on Belvedere Road, and it was a lovely big Victorian house from
probably
the outside.
Where I lived, but not at that time.
But anybody looking, they thought I was really posh. She lives in Belvedere Road, but little did they know that the bathroom, somebody had nicked all the lead, so you couldn't get a bath in the bathroom. So as kids, we used to have to go up to the public baths and get a bath in the public baths and stuff like that.
Wow.
And so, in the late 70s, my mother was offered a new build house on Upper Warwick Street in Arnold Close. And so, it was great. We were like, it had 2 bathrooms. For a family that was used to having no bathroom,
or an outhouse out back.
But the thing was, is she didn't have a great deal of cash because, she worked all the hours God sent, but she still had 4 kids to look after.
I know, it's amazing.
So she decided to do a shebeen. I think it was just out of sheer frustration with the landlord. He was the most appalling landlord ever. And she ended up doing a fight back against the slum landlords. And speaking on
that activist again.
There you go. And then speaking on Granada reports about it, speaking out and saying, it was just abysmal substandard housing, the way things were being left. And that was the story of the day. Everybody lived in houses like that, and she was very, very lucky. And so I think as a parting gesture to him, she decided to throw a couple of shebeens to help to furnish the new house. So, I think she got a bit of a reputation as running a shebeen for a while. I think she'd done it for about a week or so. And the secret ingredient to getting people to stay and to drink, she'd light all the fires in the house. And it'd be absolutely roasting hot. And then, people would drink more because it was so hot. I think she started a little bit of salt as well into some of the drinks as well. So
if it works, it works, right? But I mean, also too is like, because this time period is what's fascinating for me, because I was hearing stories about the species. You have the black GIs, that were staying up in Burtonwood, I think, and everything, and they would come down into Liverpool, as you do, but they would be turned away from the public houses. And, they would have to find their way into the shebeens. And I just thought, I don't know, it's just fascinating because the shebeens accepted everybody, didn't they?
They did, yeah.
There was no like, no, not you or anything like that. It was like a lot of like, that American Motown music. I heard there was a lot of like trading of music and stuff like that. And Liverpool still has that kind of culture today. They love their, like, I would say their Motown music or their, that kind of stuff. And, it must have been an interesting time because when I heard about it, I'm just asking from your perspective.
Yeah. I mean, we had to be inclusive because there were so many colour bars on in the city centre. I mean, nobody could go to the city centre right up until the 80s. There were still colour bars on in the city centre, because I know my brothers, you know, who ended up working on doors, but, you know, before that, you know, they struggled to be allowed entry into anywhere, you know. So I think in terms of the shebeens, it was all embracing. You know, everybody was accepted as long as you know, behaved yourself and, you know, you didn't cause any, you know, fights and stuff like that. But, you know, it was all about, you know, socialising, coming together and everybody having a good time. Because, you know, we didn't have any venues where we could do that. Yeah. You know, there was a couple, as I was, you know, when I was a child, like Stanley House and a few places like that. But there really wasn't anywhere for us to go and socialise. And it's still the same today, unfortunately.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, moving into the 80s, you know, now you're moving into a young woman, you know, with this strong role model figure as a mom and everything. I think this is when you first decided to dip your toe into politics by, say you were the chair of Granby Politics, you want to say?
Oh, it was Granby Toxteth Partnership. And so round about that time, I'd learned about Objective One funding. And anybody knows about it knows that the allocation was made on the indices of deprivation. And so Liverpool scored quite high in terms of, you know, the application stage. And so the money was, you know, divvied up and given to certain areas across not just across the UK, but globally. And so, you know, it was about the infrastructure, about building employability. It was the pillar of what we're doing at the moment. And, you know, we'd found out that there was millions coming into Liverpool. Wow. And a lot of it had been granted on the back of communities and neighbourhoods like Liverpool, Princes Park, etc. And myself and a couple of friends realised quite quickly that if we didn't have an input into that, then we wouldn't get anything out of it. And so we did a leafleting round, and, you know, we had to, like, you know, get everybody to put a couple of pound in and buy, you know, the paper and get it printed, and then, you know, give it out by hand. And we even listed everybody, the grandmas, when they were going to the laundrette, take them with you and give them out. And, you know, and the lads on the street, I'll just give them out when people were walking past. And that was another real sense of community effort. And so, you know, Objective One funding was, you know, we had nothing in Liverpool. You know, during the uprisings, there was nothing. Yeah. There was no opportunities, and it looked really futile. For me, this was an opportunity that we couldn't allow to go, you know, pass us by. And we had to sort of set our stall out and say, right, we're here and we want our portion of that funding, because we want jobs, we want education, we want all the things that other people strive for. We want a future. And so I became chair of Granby Toxteth Partnership. And from there, I set up the first youth forum. And enlisted one of our young men, not so young now, but not as old as me, Earl Jenkins, to be the chair. Yeah. And he was the most reluctant chair ever. He's like, I don't want to do it. I was like, you've got to do it.
It's always about the reluctant hero. That's the one you want.
That's it. And then set up the business forum and various other forums so we could have a voice, because, you know, that was before I was in Liverpool City Council, but it was all controlled by Liverpool City Council. And I remember we went down to meet with the then chief executive, which was Alan Chape. And there was a caucus of us who went down to meet with him to say, right, okay, what about discrimination, racism, you know, lack of opportunities, and to ask all these questions. And I'll never forget, as long as I live, he put a brochure on the table. And when somebody said, you know, there's not even any positive images of black people, it's like we don't exist in this city. He threw a document on the table and said, there's a black man there. And the guy said, where? And he went, him in the welder's mask. And it was an image of somebody with a welder's mask on. You couldn't tell who they were. There could have been a man, a woman, and, you know. But, you know, that flippancy, you know, it was a serious issue for us. And, you know, to be so flippant about an issue that was so serious really, you know, just gave me more power for the cause. And I thought, you know, something's got to change in this city.
Yeah, but I mean, how old were you then?
I was 21. So I was about 24. You know?
I mean, what's amazing, really, in hearing you reflect this story is just the fact that, obviously, like you said, you come from a strong mother figure, but like in that aspect, to be able to like say, this is what I want to do, this is what I believe, and and I'm gonna stand up. It's kind of like, it's not really the rise of activism, but we hear a lot about activism now, especially nowadays, about them trying to bring it back. But I mean, like, wow, that's just amazing. So, I mean, because you said the term before about standing on the shoulders of giants, but you yourself are somewhat of a giant.
I laugh because I'm 4 foot something.
You are 4 foot something.
Yeah.
You're a really short giant.
Hardly a giant.
No, but you get what I mean, though. I mean, like, because it wasn't for any other reason, but it's right.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
When I sort of embarked on this, I mean, you have to understand my background. I was quite ill as a child. I suffered from epilepsy, so
Right.
I didn't really fit in. There was very low expectations of what I would achieve.
Yeah.
I was literally written off. But the flip side of it is the children I was schooled with, had serious illnesses. Polio was still around when I was a child. They even had the iron lung still around in terms of TB and stuff like that. There were children there who were terminally ill with cancer, etc. And so I got my real source of sense of justice or injustice and fighting for justice there, by winging other children who were maybe not as strong as me or couldn't speak out. And so I learned, a great deal through that period of time. And it also gave me heaps of empathy to be able to look at other individual circumstances and understand that, everybody's got different challenges in their life.
Yeah.
But, if we're going to sort of level the playing field, it's irrelevant about, the different challenges in people's lives. It doesn't matter where you come from, it's where you get to. And we have to make sure that we put everybody on a level playing field and give everybody the same opportunity to make a life for themselves in what area they choose. But I think in terms of politics, people say to me, well, how did you end up going into politics? And it was like a really chance encounter with a guy called Rufo Brevet, who was one of Bill Clinton's political advisors, who'd come to the UK to go to London and, meet with various people. But he'd heard about Liverpool and the oldest black community in Europe. And he stopped off here. And I met him at an event and he was like, can you take me round? He said, I want to go to the city centre. And we went to the city centre and he went, where's all the black people? And I went, well, they're here, but they're not here.
Yeah.
And he went, what do you mean? I said, well, I can take you where we are, but you won't see any black people in Liverpool city centre. And that was the truth then, and it's the truth now. And so he couldn't believe it. He said, well, what are your MPs saying about it? What are your councillors saying about it? I said, we haven't got any. And he couldn't believe that. And so we embarked on this idea to train women up from the community to get them to stand as elected members. And so we did that for about 10 months and he made sure he got the funds, and it wasn't a great deal. It just covered the venue hire and, lunch and stuff for the women. And it was very much built on, good intention and a wing and a prayer, really. But what it did was, for me, it opened up the opportunities or the possibilities of putting women forward to stand in politics. So I was part of Mersey Common Purpose at the time. And they said to me, what do you want to do? I said, I want to increase representation of diverse, cultural communities. And they said, what party? And I said, that's irrelevant, any party. Because we're not a homogenous group. Some of us may be Labour, some may be Lib Dem, some may be other, follow other parties. But it was about having a presence. And so, unfortunately, none of the women went forward because at the same time, Patrona Lashley was a councillor and she was also the Deputy Lord Mayor. Unfortunately, she never became the Lord Mayor because obviously she passed away before that could happen. But, the way she was dealt with by the press, the invasion into her personal life and stuff like that, all the women on our course said, I don't want to do it.
Right.
They were like, no, they'll put, my name will be all over the papers, and, and they just didn't want to do it. And, I bigged up this, I've got all these powerful women coming through and they're going to be taking positions. And then I had to go back to these political parties and go, well, I actually haven't got anybody standing. And so I decided to just hold their interest that I'd stand for one term. Yeah. I thought, if I stand for one term and I can show people that, it's going to be difficult, but it's nothing that you can't deal with.
Yeah.
Believing naively that I could change the face of politics overnight, and then I'd have, all this black representation around me. Boy, was I misled into that. And so that one term turned into 16 years.
Wow. Glorious 16 years that is. And then not only that, but now, time later into the present, we have, Vanessa Botine and Nosley. Yeah. We have Kim Johnson. Yeah. We have Joanne. So now it's like, whoa, what happened? And everything. Open the doors you have done. And everything.
Well, I kicked them in.
You kicked out the floodgates.
I kicked them doors in.
Because there was nobody else at the time, so
there wasn't. And I don't want to make lighthearted of it all, because it was probably one of the most difficult periods in my life. Certainly one of the most loneliest periods in my life, standing as an elected member. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Racism and discrimination knows no boundaries.
Yeah.
It transcends everything. And so, it wasn't a pleasant experience. It was a very difficult and lonely experience for me. But, the thing that kept me going was that I just didn't want to give in to it.
Yeah.
And I thought, and I felt as though I'd given an undertaking with the women I'd trained to show that, if I can do it, anyone can do it. And so I just fought on. And, and I experienced it, misogyny. It was all men. When I was first elected, I think there was about 12 Labour councillors, predominantly men. And so, I had a whole host of challenges in terms of, sexism and discrimination and, people's perception of black people and, people look and go, what's she doing here and stuff like that. But you know what? I didn't let it get in my way. I just stayed focused on what I needed to do. And stayed focused on the fact that anyone that came behind me wouldn't have to deal with this level of misogyny or racism, because, I'll have taken it on the chin, taken one for the team, as they say.
Yeah. But then, all good things, come to a change.
Yeah.
And everything. And now you're moving into, like, as you say, I don't want to say your quote, achieve more outside than in, but you decided to move into education sector.
Yeah.
Taking on a fellowship at Hope University and everything, and starting this, or being a part of this new Black social workers course. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I haven't decided to go into education. That's where I started off. Education. And there's a link here because I'd been written off educationally at quite a young age. I was always passionate about education. And so I taught, English as a second language, and then I taught around Objective 1 funding, and then I also taught the first trainee social entrepreneurs programme in the country for Lord Scarman, working with inner city kids. And so it's I've returned back to my roots in terms of education, because education is still the key.
Yeah.
And so working at Hope University, we hear about people who want to effect change. But often, with the greatest respect, people don't know how to effect that change.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of goodwill, good intention, but in terms of looking at the infrastructure, etc., sometimes that's the difficult part. I met with Jared Pillay, the Vice-Chancellor at Hope, who's an amazing person and really 100% committed to change in terms of equality and inclusion. And we hatched a plan that I would work with them to work on the Black Social Workers course, which is an existing course, but to make sure that we opened it up and looked at how we increase the amount of people from Black and brown communities attending. And then also looking at the infrastructure, because you can't just change by just saying we're going to open up to 15 places. We need to look at the people who are actually employed, the mentors, the peer mentors, And so really calling on people from social work, from the black community, and asking them to have an input into the course, and also to be mentors to the students when they come through.
Yeah.
And so the commitment was unbelievable. We've got work to do. We've got 3 more courses to build, not necessarily social work, but 3 more interesting courses to build together. And I'm really looking forward to it, and the opportunities there. But I'd just like to say to people, when they see these courses being advertised, please apply, because these courses are, being created for you.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's, the thing is that you've got a guaranteed interview. And, and even if you need to do a foundation course, don't let that put you off, because we can resolve that issue by doing a foundation course as well. Yeah. But, this is a time for great opportunities for the black community. The time's never been as sound as now in terms of the willingness of people who can affect the change coming together. And so we need to step up to the plate and take the opportunities on.
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely. I mean, this definitely sounds like a way forward. I mean, because it's also just proof positive of black excellence, being a way forward and acknowledged. I'm hoping that you do take on that role. As you say, you're still, making the decision. Cluck, cluck, I'm just trying to say. But, that's pretty much our time there, Anna. I mean, it's been fascinating. First of all, it's great to learn something new, like we've been friends for some time. And I mean, you have a fascinating story and history and stuff like that. I can definitely see your power and strength. And it's good to know where it comes from.
There's always a next, isn't there? Because
there is.
You can't stand still. We have to constantly evolve.
Exactly.
So there's always a next thing to do.
And you're on that treadmill. That's what I'm trying to say. This is not probably the next thing, but this is one of the things that you're doing now.
I'm a workaholic, and I'm passionate about community. So there's always going to be a next thing for me to do, and rise to the challenge. If I see an opportunity, I grasp it with both hands. And if I can further advance our community as well, then that's it. Game, set, and match for me. I'm ready to roll with it.
I'm going to keep an eye out on what you do next and everything, and trying to understand that quack you talk. But once again, I just want to thank you. I just want to thank you once again, Anna Rothery, for joining me here on Big Condo Online. It's been a pleasure. I've been chasing you for about 6 months to a year, but finally I got you here in the studio, so I want to thank you very much. It's been a very enlightening conversation. I hope you enjoyed it.
It was great, thanks. I always enjoy having a chat to you, and I promise I won't leave it as long next time.
I hope not. Anyway, so this is Chase Johnson Lynch. You've been watching the Community Podcast here on Big Condo Online. Please like and subscribe. Hit the bell. You know what I'm saying? That's what they say and this stuff. But we out of here.